Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Unfound Now. I am Unfound's host, Ed Densel. This is the third episode of Unfound Now. Back in June of 2020, we covered the disappearance of Linda Stoltfus from Pennsylvania. Although she has not yet been found, a suspect is in custody who they believe is responsible for her disappearance. Last month, in July of 2020, I talked about the disappearance of Erica Lloyd in California, and just within the last few days, I'm recording this particular episode on August 14th, 2020. Just a few days ago, remains were found in the area where Erica's car was found in June, and those remains are now being tested to see if they, in fact, are Erica's. We still don't know anything about any suspects or if it was foul play, anything like that, but just within the last few days, some remains were found not far from where her car was towed away from. This month, today, I'm going to be talking about the disappearance of Marilane Carter, a mother, a wife, who on August 1st left her home in Overland Park, Kansas, and she was driving to Birmingham, Alabama. Everybody believes she was doing this to get some mental health help. I guess she had been having some issues. And so what I'm going to do is go through just the general facts. Coincidentally, today, August 14th, there was a press conference, a long one, I would say, 20 to 25 minutes, where a detective had a little speech, and then he did take some questions from the media there. And so I want to talk about that. And then we will get into my analysis of Marilane's disappearance. I'm not going to do any theorizing. This is going to be very much like the first two episodes of Unfound Now. What we're trying to do with these episodes, we're trying to teach the public how to look at disappearances, how to analyze them, just by going from what the public facts are, what the police are saying, and then using Unfound's disappearances. We've covered about 180 on the program to this point. We're almost 4 years old. And using some of those disappearances, whether they are solved or not, and try to apply those cases to the one that we were talking about on Unfound. Once again, this will be the disappearance of Marilane Carter, disappearance that happened not quite 2 weeks ago. So I'm going to be looking off to my left, or maybe your right, occasionally to look at some notes that I've taken. And then once again, I will get into the analysis of her disappearance. Marilane Carter was traveling from Overland Park, Kansas to Birmingham, Alabama. Approximately, I did a Google map on it, and it's approximately an 11-hour drive. She left on August 1st, which happens to be my birthday, at about 8 p.m., Central Time, I guess that would be. And she stopped at a McDonald's on the way, and then she was seen on video at a hotel in West Plains, Missouri at 3:45 a.m. West Plains and Overland Park, Kansas are in the same time zone, so it took her, I guess, almost 8 hours to get from Overland Park, Kansas to West Plains. And I'll come back to that in a bit as far as part of the analysis. Then on August 2nd, she was only in this hotel for about 3 hours, then she left. And then on August 2nd, she stopped and got gas. During the press conference today, they said that she got $33 of gas in her SUV, which might have been enough to fill it up, of course, depending on how much gas was in it in the first place. And so she was seen on video there as well. Like I said, I watched the news conference. I would urge you to go do that. You could probably Google that. I think it was a really good press conference. Usually, I have to say, you usually don't get a lot out of them. A lot of just canned questions and answers. But I thought the police officer who held that press conference did a really good job being very forthcoming about what they were doing, although I'm sure he didn't say everything. Marilane did have some mental health issues going on. That's why she was traveling from Overland Park, Kansas to Alabama. Although she was living in Kansas with her husband. I believe he is a pastor at a church, and they have children, but she has many family members. She might even be originally from Birmingham, Alabama, and so she felt more comfortable going there to get this mental health help instead of doing it in Kansas. The husband did speak to her on August 2nd on the phone. In fact, I believe somebody else also spoke to her on August 2nd, and both people expressed some concerns about how Marilane was feeling, how she was acting, and what she was saying. The phone went dark, whether it got turned off or the battery died or something else happened. It got destroyed somehow. It went dark around the Memphis area near the Mississippi River on August 2nd. And the police officer who did this press conference today on August 14th said that they've tried to use OnStar, which her SUV had. They've tried to use satellite radio. They've tried to use traffic cams. They've tried to use license plate readers around the Memphis area. None of that has been any help so far to figure out where Marilane or her SUV, I believe it's a GMC Acadia, are. No pings have been done yet on the phone, and I just learned this. Maybe you might find this interesting. I did not know this, but in Kansas, cell phone companies will just not give out information for pings just because the police want them. There has to be some sort of criminal activity connected to the use of the phone before a cell phone company will give that information up. I'm guessing this is a state-by-state law, but this is what the police officer said. So right now, they have no ping information regarding Marilane's phone. The only reason that they're searching in the area that they are is because of when the phone went off, but there is no ping information. So those are some of the facts regarding her disappearance, what we know at this time, not quite 2 weeks after she disappeared. This is what another one of those, like Linda Stoltfus, this is what we would call a destination disappearance, meaning in Linda's case, she was walking from somebody's house to her own house and disappeared somewhere in between. We now know that she did get picked up by the man who is in custody now. Marilane's is kind of the same situation, although she was driving a fairly long distance from Kansas to Alabama. I think the other difference between hers and Linda's, even though they are both destination disappearances, is that at this point, nobody out there is saying that there is any foul play involved. Whereas I think with Linda's, I think it became obvious fairly early on that probably somebody picked her up or she got in a car with somebody and went off. We now know that I guess you could say that she was abducted. There's no allegations of that in Marilane's disappearance, at least not now. Some things you, the public, need to understand about missing persons cases where it could be a mental health issue. Anything is possible. I cannot stress that enough. I think that's what we've learned after 180 disappearances, where any of the disappearances that we've covered, when the person is alleged to have a mental health issue or has been having them, whether it is paranoia, schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, whatever. I'm not a doctor, but whatever it could be, we've learned that anything is possible. And what I mean by that is that the person could be found alive months later, years later, or the person could be found deceased right around the area where he or she disappeared. Anything is possible. It could be that they, because of their mental issue, they happened upon the wrong people and then foul play was involved. Anything is possible. And so you can't start limiting your ideas to just certain choices. Anything, I cannot stress this enough, anything is possible. And in fact, in that way, they are very much like disappearances that could be related to drug use. And I'm not, of course, saying that mental health issues and drug use are the same. Of course, they're not. But what we've also learned in disappearances where it could be a drug deal gone bad, or somebody was high on meth or opioids or whatever the case may be, in those types of situations also, anything is possible. It could be that the person overdosed and other people covered it up. It could be that the person was having some sort of episode and just ran off to parts unknown. The disappearance could happen in Pennsylvania and they could be found in California. Anything is possible. So that's one thing that I would stress when you're, if there's an allegation that the person was having mental health issues. You must be completely wide open to everything. I could give an example. This wasn't a disappearance. It was a disappearance, I guess, for a few days, but it was resolved. To give you a good idea on this, a couple years ago, and I have this in my notes, there was a Canadian who came down to the United States and was up in the Northeast somewhere. Maybe it was New Hampshire, New York, somewhere like that. And he disappeared, and he was found alive in California. And he claimed that he had no idea how he got there. Several days later, that's where he was found. He ended up calling his wife from California and saying, "I'm here in California and I don't know how I got here." Now, some people, of course, don't believe that. Some people believe that, let's just say maybe he ran off with another woman and then this was his excuse. But he was claiming that he had some sort of mental health episode, and somehow he was in the Northeast of the United States, ended up in California. That is how wide open these types of disappearances can be. The big difference, though, I would say also between drug disappearances, which once again, anything is possible, and mental health issue disappearances where anything is possible, is usually it is known that the person is an addict or was doing drugs. It's very obvious. Whereas mental health issues can pop up out of nowhere. Somebody could be fine for 40 years, 50 years, and then suddenly have a panic attack that could cause them to go off and do things they normally wouldn't do. That's the tough part about those kinds of disappearances. Now, in Marilane's case, it seems that she knew and other people in her family knew that something was going on with her, and that's the exact reason she was driving from Kansas to Alabama to get help. Now, some of the issues that catch my eye that I think that are important is that Overland Park to West Plains. Overland Park is where she was living, and West Plains is where she stopped in at the hotel. That's only a 4.5-hour drive, but she left her house at 8 p.m. and didn't get to the hotel until 3:45 a.m. That's almost 8 hours. Now, I learned from the press conference today that she did stop somewhere to eat, but that surely does not cover that additional time of like 3.5 hours. So there's a 3.5-hour window in there that hasn't been explained. She should have, if she was planning to stop at that hotel, she should have gotten there at like 12:30 a.m. on August 2nd, not 3:45 a.m. August 2nd. And I'm not sure anybody knows where she was for those additional, let's just say it, 3 hours. We just don't know. I think it's worthy to look into that, and it might reveal what her state of mind was at the time. Maybe some other people have noticed that. I did. The other part that is also bothersome, and having driven across the United States a few times, is that you need your rest. And she was going to be driving 700 some miles, and she stops in at this hotel and is only there for 3 hours. Not enough time. Not enough time to get some good rest. If you're going to stop in a hotel for 3 hours, you might as well just save the money and sleep in your car. That's been my experience. So that is bothersome as well. Maybe she was having sleeping problems. Maybe it was this. Maybe it was that. Maybe she was paranoid. We don't know. But that should be a big red flag as to her mindset at the time, right around the time that she disappeared. And I think during the press conference, in so many words, the police officer doing the press conference also kind of explained the same point. 3 hours, just not long enough to get some good rest to get back out on the road. Now, right now, as of August 14th, they are doing searches around the Mississippi River area near Memphis. And the reason they're doing that is for no other reason in that they believe that's the area she would have been in when her phone went dark. And what I mean went dark is it just shut off, whether the battery died or she destroyed the phone or somebody shut it off, whatever the case may be. That is the general area where her phone clicked off. So they're searching the water. They're searching all around that area for no other reason. And this police officer, this detective, admitted that they're not sure if she went into the river or not, but that's why they're looking around. Should know this. Regarding cars and people that end up in bodies of water, it's not very common. It happens, and it seems like once a month I will run across a story where many years later a person in the car is found in a body of water. In fact, on Unfound, a disappearance we covered in 2017, Esther Westenbarger, just within the last month, 6 weeks, she and her car were found very close to where she lived. It seems she went into the water by accident. And I live in the Clearwater Beach area, but maybe 5 years ago, 6 years ago, a woman went missing in her car from over on the other side of Tampa. And it turned out that she made a wrong turn in some subdivision and drove right off a boat ramp into the water and died. And her car was eventually found. So what this should mean to all of you is that when cars and people end up in the water together, it is usually by accident. Not, it's usually by accident. I'll just put it that way. Now, of course, there could be some situations where it was foul play and somebody left the person in the car and pushed it into a body of water. That, of course, happens too. But I can tell you overwhelmingly, when cars and people end up in the water, it is by accident. People do not choose to commit suicide that way. We know that people hang themselves, they may shoot themselves, they may jump off a very high bridge like the Golden Gate Bridge. But for a person to commit suicide driving their car into a body of water, very, very rare. Having said all that, if she went into the water, I do not believe it's near Memphis. Now, regarding cars and people, we've covered 180 disappearances on Unfound. Really good cross-section of people, demographic, different states, different areas in the city, in the country. It's a pretty good cross-section of disappearances, I believe. We've only covered 5 disappearances where a car and a person were missing for an extended period of time. And only one of those has been solved, the aforementioned Esther Westenbarger. These other disappearances are Jeff Joseph, Lola Fry, Eric Franks, and Tammy Arthur and Chad Peters. That couple disappeared together. So what that means is that people and their cars going missing and them staying missing is very, very rare. What is it? 5 out of 180 cases. What is that? Something like not quite 3%. Very, very rare. What is much more likely in disappearances is the car is found, but the person is not. And we've had a whole host of disappearances like that on Unfound where the car is found and the person isn't. So what that means is that regarding Marilane Carter's disappearance, I think that it is very, very improbable that if she is found, that she and her car are found in a body of water. Very improbable. On top of that, it is much more likely that her car is found and she isn't than both of them being found in a body of water. That's just what the stats say regarding disappearances that Unfound has covered. Next point, and this is regards once again to mental health issues. public might not realize this, but it very well could be, although I do not think it's probable, but it is possible, that she could be in a health facility right now and nobody knows it except for the staff there. Because of HIPAA laws, this is a law that was passed a federal law that was passed in the mid-1990s. It's gotten much more difficult for loved ones, a husband, children, parents, to find out if their child, their wife, father, mother has admitted himself or herself into a medical facility. And the reason that is privacy concerns override everything else. So it could be, I don't know how possible it is, but it is possible that, or I don't know how probable it is, but it is possible that Marilane Carter is in some medical facility somewhere, and the hospital is under no obligation to tell anyone that she is there because they're going to protect her medical rights first. And I know that's a little shady. I don't know if it's shady, but it's a little controversial. We do talk about it once in a while on Unfound, how many families, when they're trying to find a missing loved one, do run up against HIPAA laws and those privacy laws. But it is possible in Marilane Carter's case, simply because she was having mental issues, and she might have admitted herself maybe somewhere else. Maybe she didn't go to Birmingham, Alabama. Maybe she went somewhere else. Maybe she went to Kentucky. Maybe she just went to Arkansas, Texas, Louisiana, anywhere. You have to remember, she filled up her car with gas on August 2nd, $33 worth. She could be anywhere. She really could be. She could be in Pennsylvania. She could be in California. She could be anywhere. And that's what I would stress to all of you. What I think I know about this kind of disappearance is that after 2 weeks of looking for her in the Memphis area like they've been doing and not finding her car anywhere, even though they know the license plate. I wouldn't say Acadias are unique vehicles. They're not common vehicles. They're not unique vehicles. They're somewhere in between. Being that we have so many many people in law enforcement looking for her car, I think it would have been found by now. That it hasn't tells me she nor her car are in the Memphis area. And probably the search should be widened. Be on the lookout should be extended to all of those states. Anywhere that she could have traveled in her car with a full tank of gas. We just don't know, like I said at the beginning. Mental health, disappearances, anything is possible. And so when you start limiting yourself, limiting your thinking, you make it much more probable that the disappearance is not going to be solved. So that is how I analyze Marilane's disappearance. And I hope you enjoyed this episode. And I'm going to probably be doing one of these a month, once again, depending on the disappearances that become national news, much like Marilane's has. Thank you for watching.